Servus, Christopher hier von Recruiting Results. Und ich habe ein ganz besonderes Video für dich, denn die Tage hatte ich die Möglichkeit, mit Nate Guggia zu sprechen. Und Nate arbeitet bei Job Portraits und ist ein absoluter Experte beim Thema Employer Branding and Candidate Experience. Das heißt, er kennt sich extrem gut damit aus, wie Unternehmen über Content Marketing, also das Teilen von Geschichten aus dem Unternehmen, dem Öffnen von Einblicken in die Arbeit im Unternehmen, die richtigen Mitarbeiter gewinnen können. Und wir haben einfach mal miteinander gesprochen und ich möchte dieses Video unbedingt mit dir teilen, weil die Insights von Nate sind wirklich fantastisch. Und wenn du das, was Nate in unserem Gespräch geteilt hat, für dein Unternehmen umsetzt, hast du wirklich die Möglichkeit, langfristig sicherzustellen, dass du die Leute anziehst, die absolutes Interesse an deinem Unternehmen haben wollen und die wirklich mit dir etwas bewegen wollen und die nicht einfach nur auf der Suche nach dem nächsten höheren Gehaltscheck sind. Ich freue mich auf jeden Fall sehr, das Ganze mit dir zu teilen. Du findest die Kontaktdaten zu Nate, seinen Blog und auch sein LinkedIn-Profil unter diesem Video. Ich kann jedem empfehlen, ihm dort mal zu folgen. Es geht jetzt auch zum Video. Ganz wichtig, unser Gespräch ist auf Englisch. Ich werde am Ende unseres Gesprächs die Kernpunkte auch nochmal auf Deutsch zusammenfassen. Wenn du irgendwelche Fragen zu den Inhalten aus dem Video hast, dann kommentier gerne unter diesem Video, schick mir eine Nachricht auf LinkedIn, was auch immer. Ich helfe dir da gerne weiter, das Ganze zu verstehen und auch gerne umzusetzen. Lass mich unbedingt wissen, was hat dir gefallen, was hat dir weitergeholfen, was hat dich interessiert. Schreib es mir. Kleine Warnung im Übrigen noch. Zum Zeitpunkt unseres Gesprächs war es aufgrund der Zeitverschiebung 1:30 Uhr nachts. Ich war todmüde und hatte zu viel Kaffee intus. Das heißt, ich hoffe, du verzeihst mir die ein oder anderen Gehirnlags oder Ausrutscher und kannst das Video nichtsdestotrotz genießen und nimmst auch etwas für dich mit. And I actually would love to start out with a compliment because when I did my preparation for this call, I took a look, obviously, at your guys' career page, and I have to say it's absolutely stunning.
Like, at Job Portraits?
Yeah, I love it. Like, I love that the first thing you do, the centerpiece, is that you tell people this is how a work day for you could look like when you become part of our team. Even just talking about it gives me legit goosebumps because that is what I'm thinking about the last 6 months. Like that's the main thing, a company that is recruiting should do. And you guys, you nailed it. I love the humanity you used. It's like talking people to people, that you have faces and like no fancy schmancy language. It's like how we actually talk. You have the contact of your co-founder, which most companies, especially in Germany, would be like, no one can have this email address, like super confidential, and creates this distortion between the reality, like what is shown on the recruitment marketing, and the reality in the company. And you guys nailed it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That means a lot. I think one of the biggest compliments anybody can give a brand in general is that if you go to their website and you can tell who the people are through like the language and the vibe and the tone and just like the energy that they're giving off, if you can pull that off through a website, like, that company is on the right path. And I think like when it comes to just like brand, like there's a couple companies that really stand out. Like one is Buffer. I don't know if you know Buffer. They're in the US. Their level of culture branding is something that like we kind of patterned ourselves after. Like they inspired us a lot. There's a company called Animals, which is based out of New York, which does they're content writers on the consumer marketing side. Big fans of them. But man, So that just like means, it means a lot. It means more than you'd think, because I put so much emphasis on that when I look at brands, and it's like, can I feel who they are? And if I can, that like instantly builds a connection, and this like human element that just companies really overlook. They try to be somebody who they're not. And like, it just, I don't know, like we're so like numb to it now. Right. And so like when something like maybe Job Portraits or another company, when you just use language, like in the way that we talk, especially, you're like, oh, wow. Like it's relatable.
Yeah,
That's really
absolutely.
cool.
And that kind of segues to my first question. Like, why do you think that so many companies struggle to get this right? Why do so many companies struggle finding the right employees?
So they look, okay. So I think here, let me take a step back and I'll provide like maybe some helpful context. What type of companies do you work with?
So I personally work with mostly what is in English SMEs, company
Smaller business.
is around 100 to 100 employees, and
Perfect.
often family-owned businesses in the third generation or something. And the last few months, it was like very sales-oriented. Like that could mean sales staff for a family-owned bakery, or in the retail, or for a call center even.
Okay. All right. But now you focus on the recruiting side, or you're also helping on the sales side?
No. I don't work on the sales side. But
It's
my history, I just figured it out recently, is I always did sales job. And that's why I tend to, I think, do better work, because I can relate to the audience that my clients are speaking to.
Perfect. Okay. So that's great. So some helpful context about like where all of everything that like comes from me and Job Portraits, like where we come from. So we're Bay Area, based in the Bay Area. We're a fully remote team. Most of our clients are in the Bay Area. Most of them are VC backed tech companies. So high growth startups is like the world that like we live in. So when it comes to like employer branding and recruitment marketing, there's a big world of it out there, but the world that we live in is very narrow. So when it comes to like understanding the market and understanding the people who like lead these initiatives, like we get it. Like we really, really understand those people. When you get to larger companies, like really big, like Fortune 500 and just like mature companies, employer branding kind of takes on a new meaning. It can sit more internal. It can be a lot more communications related, but the way that we see it is like the work that we do sits so close to recruiting that it's really part of the recruiting function. So I just wanted to provide that context, because like, just so you understand like where I'm coming from, like with anything that I say. But similar to you, I actually don't have like a long history in employer branding at all. I like my whole career was like sales and marketing. I've always loved marketing, even though I was primarily in sales roles. And then I got into recruiting. I kind of like reinvented my career when I was like 35. I got into startups, got into tech, did a bunch of different things there. And then I did a stint in recruiting for a year. Really liked it. I saw the link between sales and recruiting because I had no experience whatsoever in it. And then I came across Job Portraits. I was still looking for jobs, and I came across Job Portraits. And I had really wanted to be part of a creative agency because I love creative work. I love the beauty of it. I love the skill. I love how it impacts companies. And I saw Job Portraits, and I had no idea what employer branding was, but I saw like, oh, this is creative work that applies to recruiting, and it sounds like a good fit. And then, so that's what got me into it. It was just like, I don't know if it was luck or what, but like they were looking for somebody to come in and take over for one of our co-founders as like our first like real salesperson. So I came in and I had no idea what employer branding was. And then I was like, there was definitely some training wheels. Like I was like, the learning curve was like steep, and I was like trying to figure out what this is because I didn't understand the difference between employer branding at like a Series B or C company versus like a Fortune 500. Like I didn't know anything. And then suddenly it clicked. And I was like, shit, like this is marketing, but just for recruiting. And then then everything changed for me. I just I had to like discover it for myself and come in with this like fresh perspective. And then I started doing the LinkedIn thing, which then really forces me to like flesh out like my thoughts and opinions and perspectives on this whole thing. And then it just kind of took off. And so I actually think, and for somebody like you too, and I tell people this a lot, not having a background in it is actually an advantage. I look at, honestly, like I've only been to one conference and it was like such a waste of time. It was so boring. They weren't talking about anything marketing related. It was just like marketing 101. And these were like the biggest employer brand agencies were presenting. It was some of the biggest companies in the US attending, like all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is like, are you serious? Like they're so far behind.
Yeah. It's
marketing.
Crazy.
It's crazy, but marketing is so far ahead. And I'm like, and so, but because I didn't have like any of that baggage, I like came in here, right? I was just like able to like go, oh, like all this stuff applies. Everything that applies to content marketing applies directly to employer branding, all that kind of stuff. And it's like everybody in the industry is so far behind that. So that's just like some overall context of like where I come from. But now back to
really like the point that you said that it's connected to sales, because I can't understand, like, no one of us would, no CEO would sit there and say like, well, I'm not going to do any marketing. I'm not going to let my sales team do any outreach and expect to get sales. But that is how the majority of companies I see treat their employer branding, their recruiting, it's crazy.
It is. There's a massive disconnect. I will answer your question, I promise. But this is important. Like there's this massive disconnect between the way that companies view marketing to consumers and recruiting or marketing to candidates. They just like the thing is with marketing now has built in industry-wide credibility. So like a startup with like 100 people, 150 people, 200 people, 500 people, whatever, they hire a CMO. Nobody in that organization questions that hire. Nobody questions the work that the CMO does. Nobody questions the humongous budget that the CMO is handed. Nobody does. It's like marketing has built in credibility already with everybody.
Yeah, sure. Like we need marketing.
We need marketing. We need marketing because we need money. Now, where the disconnect lies is they don't realize, or they don't emphasize, maybe is the better word, the fact that people are responsible for all of that stuff. And if you don't have the right people, none of it is going to work. Your product is going to break. It's not going to innovate. Customers aren't going to know who you are. Customers aren't going to be taken care of. The whole cycle breaks. So the emphasis is on revenue, which means the emphasis is on consumer marketing. But really, in my opinion, the emphasis needs to be on talent. And employer branding should at least have the level of credibility and support that marketing does, if not more now. And they just don't. And so a lot of employer brand leaders, or like in companies we work with, it's very common for it to be like a head of talent acquisition, or even like somebody who leads recruiting to handle employer branding, because it falls on part of their job responsibility, and they can maybe dedicate 10 or 20% of their actual time to it, which is not enough time. And they don't have budget, and they don't have a team. They're under-resourced, it's like all this kind of stuff. And so as a result, they're lagging behind because they're balancing all this other stuff, and they're taking care of like massive hiring goals, and like we need people in the door now and all this stuff. And marketing, because marketing has the support of sales, they're able to look at this differently. But oftentimes, especially at startups, employer brand doesn't have that luxury because they're trying to play both. They're trying to sell and market at the same time. And that's a big tug of war.
Yeah, that's my experience as well. And you also kind of answered the question, like, what do you mean? In one of your videos, you talked about that recruiting or employer branding should be more treated like modern online marketing. And like,
Yeah.
it's like everything, if I understand you correctly, comes from the understanding of how a company works and how a business of any size creates revenue. And it all comes back from the people. And I really like Ray Dalio's aspect that in the end, your business is a machine. And this machine is run by the people and the culture you have. And everything funnels into this.
It does. It absolutely does. So yeah, I think like there's the problem that, like, the problem stems from like the top, right? Like in any company that we've worked with like a high level of success, there's like this mindset, this like kind of like people first mindset, right? It doesn't mean like you neglect product or you neglect revenue. Those things are extremely important and like also a reason you attract talent. But it's this mindset that like people really matter. And if that is at the top and it's not this like grow at all costs kind of mindset, then employer branding like really has a shot, right? I think it does. Now, when like we're talking about like recruiters being more like marketers instead of salespeople, I think like if you pay attention to buyer behavior, the way that people buy today, and you map that back to the candidate side, it's very, very similar, right? Like we don't like to be hounded by salespeople, right? We don't like to get cold emails. We want to lead the buying process ourselves. When we need something, we know we need it. We don't need somebody to tell us we need it. Like if I have a gap in like my tech stack, or, I need a new piece of software, or I need to go to the store to go buy mouthwash because I'm out of it. Like I know I need that, and I'm going to do my own level of research depending on how big the buying decision is until I get to the point where like I actually want to talk to somebody. But like what sales has done, and they continue to do it, and I don't think it's ever going to stop, is they try to insert a person so early in the process to start a conversation that isn't ready to happen. Like you can't make a conversation happen unless it's ready to happen. But what you want to do is position yourself to be part of that conversation when it is ready to happen. And so I look at that on the recruiting side, right? Startups, the reality of startups, even like later stage, 500 to 1,000 people, it's still primarily outbound recruiting to passive candidates. Right? Okay. It's just the reality of it. Unless you're like a really well-known brand. Sorry, my dog's barking. Unless you're a really well-known brand that has, just this like level of like recognition, credibility, or you're building something super cool that engineers love, then you're going to get a level of inbound. And still you're probably going to deal with quality issues because everybody wants to work for you. But if you're like, you just like have to respect the fact that like their recruiting is still outbound. But then how do you, it is. But then how do you turn that outbound into more marketing than sales, where your recruiters can position themselves once again to be part of a conversation when that candidate is ready to have the conversation? Because like, if you're a software engineer, and like, I know in Germany too, like employer branding's hot in Germany, at least from like everybody I've talked to over there. And I don't know what she's barking at. And so it's probably very similar, and so you have like engineers who are being heavily recruited by many companies. They have lots of offers. I remember pre-COVID, I was talking to a head of recruiting who was like, we have engineers just dropping out of the interview process because they just have too many offers.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that like they don't want to work for us. It's that they just have too much being offered. And so when you're competing against that, the way to be different is to use content to make your candidates aware of what you have going on and to position yourself. So when that engineer or that salesperson, whatever, is like, you know what, I am kind of looking, because they always kind of are. This company seems really cool. And I've already gotten a look multiple times inside of what it's like to be part of this team and this culture. And I understand how they work and what they're building and all the stuff. Like, this is worth a conversation. They initiate the conversation instead of being like, you need to have a conversation with me right now because we're doing cool shit. Like, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Actually, I think because I'm doing mostly paid advertising in social media.
Perfect. I actually have questions for you about that.
Yeah, because it's so funny because the way you talk about that, I actually believe there is a way to start this conversation, but not in this way. Like, everyone who is highly qualified gets like so many boring messages on
Right.
LinkedIn, on Xing, on all these platforms. And it's everywhere. Like, my girlfriend is from Ukraine, and when I visited her, I talked to a lot of companies in the Ukraine, and even there, it's like, if you have an IT background on your LinkedIn profile, you get 20, 30 messages every single day, and they are like so boring, and no one. It's literally the guy jumping in front of you when you want to enter the supermarket, you know. And
Yes.
to jump in, you buy this brand. But with paid advertising and social media, I think you can actually invite the people who might be interested in that and start this conversation. And because, and you talked about this on your blogs. Yeah, you wrote that you are heartbroken when you get to know these excellent teams, these excellent companies, that no one knows about.
Yeah.
And I think that is where paid advertising, and even it doesn't matter if you do it in combination with microsites, with an explicit recruiting funnel, or if you want to boost your content that you have, like, you have an option to actually just start the conversation.
Yes.
Show people something they might be interested in that normally they would never find. And that kind of brings me to the question, like, I want to talk, like, how should companies start with content creation? But maybe an interesting question to start this kind of topic is, like, when do you see usually companies get the return on invest on content creation in their employer branding with a goal to like, when do companies see more and more qualified applications?
Yeah, that's a good question. Whew. The ROI of employer branding is like, it's hard. I'll tell you the reason why it's hard. And this is an area that you can really excel at. Recruiters and talent, we'll just call it like talent teams, are notoriously bad at measuring stuff. There's also a problem with like the software that they use, like ATSs, right? Applicant tracking systems. They track last touch attribution, but they don't touch all the points of attribution. So it's really hard unless you're like a marketer who like is into this stuff and loves to see how a customer or a candidate connects all the dots to get to you, right? You're going to completely miss that. And you're going to go like, my careers page converted somebody. And it's like, your careers page probably did not convert this person. Yeah. It was probably Google to something else, to Glassdoor, to whatever, to your careers page, which is where your job application lived, right? And so that's a problem. So like when it comes to data, I wish I had more answers for you.
Like, how long does it usually take from your experience that a company sees a rise in both the quantity and quality of applicants, like for example, when they start working with you?
Yeah. So I think the goal is to actually have less applicants if you do it right. Right. Like, because like the way that I think about this is like content is a filter at the top of the funnel. If you design content right and you really go hard on like truth and authenticity and like this idea of like attract and repel, right? Like you showcase all the sides, not just like the unique opportunities, but the unique challenges. And you do a good job with storytelling and you answer questions that candidates care about, they should self-select out of the process if it doesn't resonate, right? The whole goal, I actually have a post I've like, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Because I've like kind of already written it, but it's like, in my opinion, the job of employer branding is to make your recruiters' lives easier. It's to allow your recruiters to have more productive, more meaningful conversations instead of getting on the phone and answering the same questions over and over and over again to unqualified candidates. That's like a complete waste of time, but for some reason, volume is rewarded. It shouldn't be. It should be like less applicants, but more conversions, and more conversions means more hires in this case, right? So like, I think if somebody's going to go in on employer branding and start creating content, once the content is live, which could take, I mean, for us, and all we do is create content. Like we're just a content studio. It takes us like on like a good sized project, it will take us like 6 to 8 weeks to do it all. And I can tell you about that process, but
Absolutely. I have most of my questions are like really on the nuts and bolts.
I'll tell you the process. And you can like steal it or do it, or whatever.
I will credit you though.
No, you don't need to. I don't care. It's not like I came up with it, but I think like if your recruiters use it and you do a good job of what you're talking about with paid social, which is something I want to talk to you about. I think it's realistic to start seeing more quality candidates within 30 to 90 days. I mean, that's like, I don't think that's too short, and I definitely don't think it's too long, but that would be the goal. But you just like, the thing is like, you can't just create like a piece of content and like think you're done, you know? I mean, like it takes like repeated awareness and it takes like very strategic thinking when it comes to content. Like if you design content that is designed to take a candidate from like awareness kind of through their own research, right? By answering deeper level questions, like start with like maybe a general story that gives them a look at like what this company is about. And then like an employee profile, which gives them a look at like somebody who's like me, who's doing something that I want. And then a look inside the team with the team profile. Then a look inside leadership. Like this is the person I would be working with and this is the way they think. Now all of a sudden, like you're guiding a candidate through this process with content to the point where it's just like, whoa, all of these things really resonate, you know? And you're doing a good job of like what we did at Job Portraits, which is like pulling back the curtain on like, this is what it's like to work here. This is like what our application process is like, full transparency on compensation, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of work. It's like, it's not easy, but you can really pull it off. And if you do that, and then you start effectively distributing the content like you're talking about, I think you can see those returns and like just start seeing like an improvement. Do that consistently, and within a year, you can have a machine. I really think you could have a machine. And like, some of the biggest returns that I see, and I've talked to multiple companies who just really excel at this, is they have an engineering or like a tech blog, right? Sometimes their engineers are the ones who write. Sometimes they ghostwrite for their engineers. And that's like work that we've started doing like over the last year. Companies who build up a following on their engineering blog, when they post, they get a dramatic uptick in quality inbound candidates who are the hardest to hire. But it's because they really understand the longer term benefits of that type of content. They understand that like smart engineers want to hear from other smart engineers, and those are the people they want to sit next to every day. They want to read what they're working on. They want to be inspired by them. And then they just go, shit, this is the company I want to work for.
Yeah.
And they go and apply, you know? So I don't know if I answered your question directly. I kind of went off on a tangent, but like, it's just, yeah. I think it's just like, the one thing like I really want to happen more, and like I could do a better job at this, is like, we use the word content, but what does that mean? Right? It's like, you just can't create something for the sake of creating it. You need to create it with like intention, and there needs to be like a strategy behind it. And when it comes to when it comes to employer branding rather, the people creating this content just don't know what to do. They're not, and it's no fault of their own. They're just not marketers. And they don't have the time to like really like think about, like, if I was a candidate and I wanted to receive 5 pieces of content over the course of a month or whatever, I don't know, what are those 5 pieces? Like, what questions do they have to answer? What would like be so compelling that now this company would be part of the conversation? Instead of going like, oh, this is what everybody else is doing, so I should write an employee profile because every other company's doing it. It's like, why are they doing it?
Yeah, and I definitely want to go in this topic and talk to you about your research process and this kind of, you talk about the seed of a story thing, and that is super interesting. I just want to add that I strongly agree with what you said, and I think it's like with general marketing and brand building. You know, one thing I think gives you a short, like kickstarts the engine and gives you the results you need short term. But long term, to really be successful, you need a brand. There is no way around it. And that goes for sales, like for revenue, like hard numbers. And it goes for if you want to have the right people working on moving your company somewhere, because that's basically what people are doing. Like I recently had this thought experiment I shared on LinkedIn, asking people, yo, what would you do if you couldn't, like, we would live in a world where you don't pay your employees anymore, like we have a universal basic income or so. You still would need people that want to move something into a certain direction in the future. What I think, because you talked about that you usually need like 6 to 8 weeks to get the process together and to create the content, and then usually you see results in the quality of applicants in 30 to 60 days. So I usually, obviously, as we both know, it depends on how well the client cooperates. But in the best case, it takes me like 14 days to assemble the machine. And the benefit is, if you want paid social media advertising, if you did your research well and everything is well assembled, then you get the results in the first 48 hours. So as soon as the ads are running, if you hit the mark, the right people will come in. And
So you're bringing up something that like I am so interested in that we don't do, and we just don't do it because it's not the work that we do. Like our job is to create the stuff, and then we give it to our clients, right? It's just like any creative agency. We just happen to specialize in employer branding, and it's almost all the work that we do is like longer form written content, because the team's writers, they're journalists. That's just how we roll, and that's what people pay us for. But we'll create assets and we'll give them to our client, and then we're done,
Mm.
right? It's not up to us to distribute it for them, right? It's up to them or you, if you were there, if they were your client, to distribute it for them, right? But they almost never have you. So they have great assets theoretically that they could use in their outbound recruiting. They now have content that can live on their career site. They have content that they can send to candidates after they apply, whatever, right? But like you said, that's on them. And then step 2 of that is for them to measure that and then report back to job portraits and go, hey, we've seen these kind of results. This is really great. Like, or we want to do more, and it's like that kind of stuff doesn't happen. And I really, there's a need for somebody like you to pair up with the content creation side of it, because the distribution side of it really, really lacks a level of skill and understanding. Because like, I would imagine if you came into a company and you designed like a social media strategy and they handed you a content library, you would just be like, whoa, like, yeah, this is amazing, right? But over the moon, it'd be like the best scenario for you. And it would likewise, it would be the best scenario for us if we were to hand somebody a content library and knew that they were going to like do all the stuff that you could do. So like, I'm really fascinated by it because I don't, in the US at least, and with the startups that like I'm super familiar with, they're not running paid social to content to create awareness. Larger companies are running paid social to jobs, but they're not running it to content. And I'm like, I don't understand why they're not running paid to content to drive awareness, to drive people I just don't understand why they're not doing that.
It could be, so one reason I could find is that usually to optimize your social media strategies, to optimize the algorithm, etc., you want people to do something. So you want them to apply, but I'm pretty sure you could create a process where you can optimize the algorithm and your efforts on paid advertising with a content-based, with the content basis. But what I definitely can say is it is phenomenal in retargeting. Because studies show that like every third candidate, and I would swear like in highly competitive markets, like basically at this point it's mostly everything. Like it doesn't matter, is it engineer, IT, like even salespeople, like it doesn't matter, good people, it will always be highly competitive. So they're most likely going to be in a good job. They're going to be in a good position. So if you have a complicated process, or if you don't have fluency in your process, they will drop off. But they are still, they might still be a very, very good fit for your company, for the position you have. And that means also for them, it could be the right thing, but they are not able to experience this. That's why I love paid social media marketing so much, because you can give people chances. And in this case, like,
that's great.
Hey mate, you were interested in our company, so we think this article where we show you how we work, or we talk about how our research and development team developed this new product, or whatever, you talked about engineers, they are actually engineering brain-wired people. They much likely would be interested in that. And, that's I think is a really good circle. And B, I don't know about the US, but in Germany, like with the data protection, like it's really not fun to be an online marketer anymore.
Really? Yeah, I would imagine it's that way.
Yes, it's different, but here it's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, really? Oh man. I can go a couple minutes over if you want to, or we can stop. I think do we have like a couple more minutes or?
I mean, I don't have a time frame. Like,
I know it's super late for you. I'm just saying I have a call in 15 minutes, so I could go for like 10 more minutes if you want.
yeah. Okay. Great. So,
Sorry, I know I kind of took us all over the place.
no, it was lovely. Okay, I think the most interesting is actually, so how does your research process looks like, and yeah, like how, yeah, what's your research process for the branding and making a strategy for an employer? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, so we typically are brought in for two different kinds of projects. One is just pure content. Company's already clear on basically who they are. They're clear on their values. They're clear on their culture. They're clear on all that stuff. And we come in and help them figure out what kind of content we need to create and do a bunch of deliverables. And basically at this point, we do every kind of writing you can think of, even like internal comms, which we're getting a lot of that kind of business right now because a lot of teams are like pausing on the hiring front. So we're doing a lot of internal comms writing. So we'll do that. So there's writing, creative services, and then there's the strategy side, which is like, are you familiar with what an EVP is? Employee
Sure.
value proposition. Okay. So we'll do a handful of EVP projects a year. They're very resource intensive. They take 3+ months to do, and they're very expensive, right? We're actually cheap in the market as far as EVPs go. They can get really, really pricey. But we do them in a very unique way, and we put a heavy emphasis on research with those. But either way, we do a lot of research on our own because it's really important for us to like not just understand the market, but really understand like what the candidates that our clients who our clients are competing for, what kind of content they really care about. And so we do UX research with candidates who are on the market. We use a service called User Interviews. I think they're based out of Boston. We can get candidates of all different backgrounds who are just like on the market, and like we pay to like interview them and just like put content in front of them and watch how they do research and do all kinds of stuff. So like we're really like up to date on like the external market. We do that kind of research when we do brand strategy at the EVP level, which a lot of companies don't do the external research. They only focus on the internal. And then we also do research. I think for any company who's leading this charge, they need to like really see their internal market, which is their employees, as like their best feedback loop. You have to balance the external with the internal, but we run focus groups with anywhere from like 4 to 6 employees from all different functions, from all different backgrounds. And we'll do as many rounds of those as we need. Like we're just finishing up an EVP project with a pretty big tech company that I can't mention their name, I don't think. But anyway, I think it's an NDA thing. But anyway, we did like 11 rounds of focus groups with them because they're big and there's a lot of employees and they're all over the place. That feedback is fascinating because employees really want to talk. They really want to share their stories and they're opinionated. And a lot of times they don't get the voice that they want. And at the same time, running focus groups internally to get feedback and extract stories and like hear what people think about the brand, it gets a level of support for employer branding that wasn't there before. So now people are like, oh, this is what it's about. Like, this is what we're doing. Wow, the company cares about our culture and they want to hear from us and they're writing stories about us and all this kind of stuff. It like has all these residual effects, right? But I think like if you're going to come in and create content, it's like you look at priority hiring roles or priority hiring departments. You talk to those function leaders. You find out who the culture holders in those departments are and you interview them. And then from there, you extract, you have to think and operate like a journalist. And then it's your job to find the stories, put them into a format that is digestible for candidates, which is a lot of times Q&A, answer questions, provide storytelling answers, right? because a candidate can read it and they can go, boom, boom, boom. This is like checking all my boxes. And then you share that stuff externally, but you share it internally too. So you share those stories around inside the company, get employees excited about it to like encourage them to organically share it out. I think like a lot of initiatives about like employees being brand ambassadors is like a really hot topic. It's super agreeable, but the execution of it, people just don't understand the realities of it. They think you can just go like get employees excited about sharing content. And that's not the case for most companies. You need to like prove the worth of sharing something. And so that's another function or another lever that like employer branding can like really pull.
Do you do one-on-one interviews?
Yeah. So if you're doing like an employee profile type thing, you could do one-on-one interviews. If you're doing a team profile, you'll do like 2 to 4 on 1.
Yeah.
And you'll write a story about 2 to 4 people.
Have you ever read from Gerald Saltman, How Customers Think?
No.
I think you will love that.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
And it's blew my mind thinking about research, and because you mentioned focus groups, it talks a lot about the downside of focus groups and how one-on-one interviews using metaphor elicitation. Actually, like I think you talked like 4, 5 one-on-one interviews can give you the same insight as 50 or 60 focus group participants.
Oh, interesting.
And it's about like understanding the concepts that your target audience, your users, your customers, your employees have when they think about a certain product or certain thing. So my English is leaving me. I need coffee. But I get the gist of it.
So there's one more thing that's really interesting. Thank you for that. I'm going to check that out. One other aspect of this is that recruiters, because recruiters are like, are you there still?
Yep. Listening.
Okay, cool. Something flashed up on my screen. Because recruiters are your best source of feedback and information because they're the ones who are talking to candidates every day. So like interview employees to get the feedback and the stories, but also interview your recruiters to find out what your candidates are caring about. And then you can like pair the two. So you could take like the stories and feedback from one side of it, and then the feedback from your recruiter. So you can then design content to like either overcome those challenges or those objections, to give more exposure into the things that you know the candidates are caring about, all this kind of stuff. That's part of like the making your recruiter's life easier. But get your recruiters part of this process because they want to be part of it. They just don't typically have the opportunity to be part of it.
Yeah, not giving the resources or the room for it. You're kind of torturing me here because I still have so many freaking questions I would love to ask you. Like maybe one last thing. What makes a good story seed, and how do you develop it to a real story?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, but it starts with like asking really good questions, which is like a core value of job portraits, is asking really good questions. And that comes because the team is externalists. And so they really, really value questions and like, not just like
some examples.
Yeah. So like one question that will get the conversation started is like, tell me a story that is so, pick the name of the company, right? Like, tell me a story, or tell me a moment that was so job portraits. Okay. If you asked me that question, I would tell you, I would just like, I have so many in my head. I would be like, oh, there's this time where I was like really struggling. And like, I got on a call with like our co-founder, and she's like a mentor, and she talked me off the ledge, and like blah, blah, blah. And this is what I got out of it. I can talk to you for 30 minutes about that one story, which would give you a look inside of our culture about like how much we value personal growth and how that is like a fundamental like belief at our company. You could take that as a storyteller, as a content creator, and turn that into something, right? Or you could interview like multiple members of the job portraits team and ask them that same question. That question alone gets people really, really talking, right? What are red flags when you talk to candidates? Fast forward 2 years and the company failed. Why did it fail? Like ask questions like that, like that. Those are like, so you have to ask questions that like bring out like the really great parts of the company, but then also like the challenges, like if you ask me like why job portraits would fail, I could talk to you about like, well, the market could shift and like creative services is a hard business and blah, blah, blah. Like that's all that stuff is really important for somebody to know if they're going to work for job portraits, for example. Like there are challenges with our business that not everybody is equipped to handle. We're a small company. We don't have a lot of runway. Like you have to be like okay with risk. Like all this kind of like, if you don't want any of that stuff, then like job portraits, even though like you might love the company, is not the place for you to work. Right. So like you ask those kinds of questions and then then you can start crafting like content. So hopefully, I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it definitely confirms my suspicions. I'm currently I dabbled in content creation for some of my clients as well. And also right now I'm trying to use some of Salman's strategies and using images to figure out which are the core values and core concepts employees and the CEOs of companies are using to use that in the landing pages, in the recruiting process, and basically every touch point that I create for my clients to use that, to really that people understand each other. I think that is the goal of both our work, that the right people understand each other on the side of the candidate, of the talent, and the company.
That's a really great way to summarize it. There's like, if a company can have that mindset and just understand that like patience is like a strength, because like balance like your timeline for like potential return and then my timeline for potential return, right? Balance those. Doesn't matter. Either one is not a long time. Even if somebody were to invest for a year in like what we're talking about and like just really focus on brand and say like, okay, we're going to focus on brand over conversions. They're going to get short-term conversions regardless. And they're going to build this machine that we've talked about. And neither one of those is a long time. A year in business years is like nothing. It's a blip. Yeah. So much shit changes in a year, and that's like that's the misconception is like long-term is made out to be this like years and years and years. And it's really not in the work that we do. It just is not tomorrow. It means like, stop trying to sell shit tomorrow. Like,
build relationships.
That's it sounds so
humans are designed to build relationships.
I know it sounds so cliche, but it's like, it's really, so it's critical to everything. So, all right, man, I better jump. If you ever want to talk again, I'm happy. I'll talk to you anytime, man. I love this. This is fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to stay in contact, man.
Please do. Like, I'm serious. Like, I would love to talk to you and we can figure out a better time so you're not up at all hours, okay?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Have a fun day. Good week, mate.
All right, my friend.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, wow, das war das Gespräch mit Nate. Ich fand es wahnsinnig hilfreich und ja, ich habe tatsächlich die Kerninhalte von Nate nochmal zusammengefasst für dich auf Deutsch, knapp. Und die Kern-Learnings, die ich aus dem Gespräch mit Nate mitgenommen habe, sind unter anderem, dass Unternehmen Mitarbeitergewinnung und das Thema Recruiting, HR-Marketing, Personalmarketing mehr wie modernes Online-Marketing betrachten sollten, beziehungsweise wie Vertrieb, wie Verkauf. Und Marketing hat in allen Unternehmen mittlerweile Kredibilität, weil jedes Unternehmen Umsatz braucht. Was wir aber verstehen müssen, ist, wir brauchen dementsprechend Personalmarketing, denn wir brauchen die Mitarbeiter, um die entsprechenden Kunden zu gewinnen, um Produkte herzustellen, um Dienstleistungen, Service abzuliefern. Ja, ohne die Mitarbeiter funktioniert das alles nicht. Das heißt, wir brauchen Personalmarketing, genauso wie wir Marketing für unsere Produkte oder zur Kundengewinnung brauchen. Denn ohne die richtigen Mitarbeiter bricht dieser Kreislauf in sich zusammen. Und aus Nates Erfahrung, und das kann ich auch mit meiner eigenen Erfahrung unterstützen, Unternehmen sollten mehr Ressourcen für das HR, für das Personalmanagement Department tatsächlich freisetzen. Und es ist egal, ob es jetzt ein großes Unternehmen ist oder ein kleiner Drei-Mann-Betrieb, wo das Ganze vom Inhaber selber genommen wird. Ja, auch dann müssen diese Ressourcen in der Ressourcenplanung, in der Zeitplanung mit aufgenommen werden. Nate hat davon erzählt, dass alle erfolgreichen Unternehmen, mit denen er gearbeitet hat, tatsächlich ein besonderes Mindset hatten, und zwar ein People-First-Mindset. Das heißt, alle guten Unternehmen haben klar verstanden, okay, mein erster Fokus ist auf die Mitarbeiter, die Kultur, die ich im Unternehmen habe. Ray Dalio, den ich sehr bewundere, spricht viel darüber. Ich habe heute noch einen neuen HR-Blog entdeckt, wo ein Interview mit dem Trigema-Chef geführt wird, ja, der genau dieses Mindset, diese Einstellung dem eigenen Unternehmen, den Mitarbeitern gegenüber mitbringt. Und auch die Top-Arbeitgeber immer wieder. Ich hatte gerade mit Christian Marxin von DP Elektronik gesprochen, der auch gesagt hat, okay, als Inhaber, als Geschäftsführer verstehe ich als allererstes, ohne meine Mitarbeiter geht hier gar nichts. Und alles, was passiert, geht von diesem Mindset, von diesem Grundverständnis aus. Das andere ist Kandidaten, das geht super mit diesem Mindset einher, ja, Kandidaten dieselbe Aufmerksamkeit entgegenbringen und mit derselben Aufmerksamkeit betrachten, wie wir unsere Kunden und Nutzer betrachten. Ja, dieselbe Perspektive einnehmen, mit der wir schauen, wie verhalten sich unsere Kunden bezüglich, wie verhalten sich unsere Bewerber, wie verhalten sich unsere Kandidaten und Mitarbeiter. Und Unternehmen sollten sich mit ihrem Employer Branding, das heißt mit ihrer Arbeitgebermarke, so positionieren, dass sie sichtbar sind, sobald der Kandidat bereit ist für den Kontakt. Das heißt, Nate als Experte für Content Marketing sagt, okay, mit Content Marketing habe ich eine großartige Möglichkeit, in das Bewusstsein von Talenten, von potenziellen Mitarbeitern zu kommen. Und wenn diese Kandidaten bereit sind, den Kontakt zu suchen, dann wissen sie bereits, mit wem sie gerne sprechen wollen. Und der Informations- und Bewerbungsprozess sollte von mir als Unternehmer so gestaltet sein, dass unpassende Kandidaten direkt aussortiert werden, weil sie verstehen, okay, so und so wird in diesem Unternehmen gearbeitet, das sind die Kollegen, die ich dort hätte, so sind die drauf und das ist nicht das Richtige für mich. Denn es geht nicht immer nur darum, mehr zu haben, sondern die Qualität ist das eigentliche Ziel, dass ich eine Auswahl von passenden, von qualifizierten Kandidaten habe. Und um dieses Content-Marketing, um diese Inhalte, den Content zu finden, empfiehlt Nate spannende Geschichten über das eigene Unternehmen bei den eigenen Mitarbeitern zu suchen. Das heißt, die eigenen Mitarbeiter in diesen Prozess einzubinden, ihnen eine Stimme zu geben und sie zu fragen. Ja, er hat ein konkretes Beispiel gegeben, mit welcher Frage man diese Geschichten, diese Inhalte tatsächlich entdecken kann. Und er fragt zum Beispiel bei Jobportraits, erzähl mir von einem Moment, der so, setze den Namen des Unternehmens ein, war. Und mit dieser Frage erreichten wir, dass ein Mitarbeiter darüber nachdenkt, hey, was macht denn das Unternehmen aus? und ein konkretes Beispiel bringt, das ich dann aufbereiten kann. Wo ich wie ein Journalist arbeiten kann, der eine Story recherchiert und dann in eine gut lesbare Form bringt. Was ich fast am spannendsten fand oder was für mich so wahnsinnig geklungen hat, war der Punkt, wo Nate darüber gesprochen hat, dass gute Leute gerne von anderen guten Leuten hören. Das heißt, der gute Verkäufer hört gerne, was machen andere gute Verkäufer, wie denken die. Der gute ITler hört gerne von anderen guten ITlern. Und der gute Bäcker hört gerne, was machen andere gute Bäcker. Die Branche oder die Stelle ist völlig egal. Auch wir Unternehmer gehen ja auf Unternehmertreffen oder nehmen an Masterminds teil, an Mentor Circle, was auch immer, bei Dirk Kräuter etc., um in Kontakt mit anderen Unternehmern zu kommen. Und diesen Faktor können wir in der Personalgewinnung nutzen, wenn wir verstehen, okay, die guten Leute, die vielleicht zu unserem Unternehmen passen, die hören auch gerne, was andere gute Leute sagen. Und wir können das nutzen, um uns für potenzielle Kandidaten darzustellen. Wichtiger Grundbaustein, Recherche ist alles. Das heißt, ich muss mir genau anschauen, wie mein Unternehmen tatsächlich wahrgenommen wird. Und das intern von meinen bestehenden Mitarbeitern, aber auch extern von der Zielgruppe. Was ist die Stimmung auf dem Markt? Und was finden Mitarbeiter und potenzielle Mitarbeiter tatsächlich interessant? Worüber sprechen sie? Also ein Ohr sowohl auf den Gleisen meines eigenen Unternehmens zu haben, als auch auf dem Markt. Und ja, der letzte Tipp, den ich mitgenommen habe, war, teile deine Geschichten, das, was in deinem Unternehmen passiert, sowohl nach außen, aber auch nach innen. Denn dadurch, dass du es nach innen teilst, machst du deine Mitarbeitern zu Botschaftern, zu Brand Ambassadors für dein Unternehmen. Und ich habe das selber erlebt bei einem meiner Kunden und ich kann dir das aus meiner tatsächlichen Erfahrung nur empfehlen. Binde deine Mitarbeiter ein, lass sie wissen, was passiert gerade im Unternehmen, was machen die Kollegen und warum denken die Kollegen, dass das Unternehmen so toll ist. Das hat auch viel zu tun mit dem Konzept der Familiarität oder jetzt fällt mir der Begriff auf Deutsch nicht ein. Umso öfter ich etwas höre und umso mehr andere Leute davon überzeugt sind, desto mehr überzeugt es mich auch selbst. Im Englischen ist Familiarity und Social Proof. Ja, das waren die Punkte, die ich aus dem Gespräch mit Nate mitgenommen habe. Schreib mir gerne mal unter diesem Video, was hast du aus diesem Gespräch mitgenommen? Das würde mich wahnsinnig interessieren. Ich habe tatsächlich noch einige andere Gespräche dieser Art mit Unternehmern, mit Experten aus den verschiedensten Branchen, Copywriting, Psychologie etc. Wenn dich solche Gespräche interessieren, die ich vor allem mal für mich persönlich führe, dann lass es mich wissen. Und abschließend, wenn du gerne herausfinden willst, wie du die passenden Mitarbeiter gewinnen kannst, ja, dann vereinbar gerne einen Termin für ein persönliches Beratungsgespräch mit mir. Dann schaue ich mir das Ganze mal gemeinsam an und helfe dir kostenlos eine Strategie zu entwickeln, wie du über gezieltes Marketing in sozialen Medien tatsächlich die passenden Mitarbeiter finden und anziehen kannst. Den Link dazu, um einen Termin zu vereinbaren, findest du ebenfalls unter diesem Video. Ja, ich freue mich auf das Gespräch mit dir und wir sehen uns. Ciao.